Today I'm in South Beach, and I decided to pick this spot in particular because there's some spots that I can walk and sort of stay in the shade for at least half of this walk, because man, this heat is insane. Just trying to do everything and anything you can to stay cool right now. And one thing that I think is going to be cooling down pretty dramatically is the economy, because it was just announced that about 37% of businesses in the United States right now are struggling in some form or another. In fact, this is just as bad, if not worse, than what we saw back during the 1970s, because the share of non-financial firms that are in financial distress right now has reached a level that's higher than the previous tightening cycles that we had back in the 1970s when inflation was raging out of control. Now, the biggest reason for this is the rate hikes that the Fed has been doing, and really they've been doing at central banks throughout the entire world. Because as the rate hikes continue and interest rates get higher, the cost of capital goes up, and it puts a damper on business investment as well as the amount of employment, which is why it's such a surprise to see how strong the job market has been since they started doing the interest rate hikes. But like we've covered in the past, most of that is due to a lot of low-paying jobs that most people just don't want, and that's why you see so many job creations and job openings available, because they can't find people to work and do these jobs. And what this story says about these struggling businesses is that we really haven't felt the effects from the rate hikes yet, and we won't really fully see the effects from them at least for the next 18 months, guys. So imagine that. We're talking a year and a half from right now, so we're talking into 2025, basically the beginning of the year, that's when we're going to finally start seeing things change. Maybe that's true, because one thing that a lot of people keep saying all the time, I hear this from you guys all the time in the comments, is, oh, you guys keep talking about housing crashes and bad economies and this and that, but yet everything seems to be doing great. Well, don't forget, $6 trillion was pumped into the economy, and I would imagine that could keep things afloat for quite a while. And the crazy thing is, the Fed's not even done with the rate hikes yet. At least according to them, they're not. They're saying they're still going to raise rates a couple more times. So imagine the long-term impacts this is going to have, guys. I want you to think about this for a minute. If 37% of businesses are not doing well financially right now, what's that number going to be like with a couple more interest rate hikes? Or better yet, even if they don't do interest rate hikes anymore, but they leave the rates where they're at right now indefinitely or for a sustained amount of time, the longer the interest rates stay high, the more pain it inflicts. Even Jerome Powell himself said in the past that it's not even so much how high the interest rates are, but how long we keep them there is what really has the most of an impact. So as long as rates remain this high or even higher, then the more chances it's going to break more things and put more people out of business and, increase unemployment and do the things that basically these interest rate hikes are designed to do right now. And one of those struggling businesses out of the 37% is Walgreens. Out of all places, guys, the nation's literally the largest drugstore in the country is struggling right now, which is kind of shocking. Walgreens is one of those places that you think would be a recession-proof business. It's got the pharmacy, it's basically like a convenience store too. Places like that usually do pretty good. People are gonna need prescriptions, people need to walk in and be able to buy things. A lot of the Walgreens over here in Miami Beach, they're 24 hours on top of that, so when everything else is closed, where do you go? You go into Walgreens, where you can still pick up a gallon of milk at 3 in the morning or whatever you need. But Walgreens is saying they're seeing consumer spending fall off a cliff right now. There's been also a big drop off in the amount of COVID-19 tests and vaccines, which I always thought was a huge money-making ploy, which obviously it is, because Walgreens is now suffering now that this is starting to go away. So some of the things they're trying to do right now in order to get back on track is they're talking about doing things like investing more into their telehealth services, but also restructuring. What does that mean? Layoffs for Walgreens? Every time I hear the word restructuring and it's attached to a business, first thing I think of is layoff. They're also looking at investing in automated fulfillment centers. What else does that mean, guys? It means robots taking people's jobs, right? Automation, AI, taking over and doing things that humans used to do. You know, the interesting thing about this is this story parallels what I heard the other day. I think it was on George Gammon's YouTube channel. He was talking about the stock market, and I am not a stock market expert, guys, but one thing he said stuck with me that I still remember, and this was about a week and a half ago, and he pretty much said something to the extent that out of the S&P 500, you have 500 companies in the S&P 500, right? And only about 3 or 4 of them are actually doing well right now and keeping this bull market going and keeping the S&P 500 going up. And if it wasn't for those 4 companies, the rest of them are all just treading water or doing poorly. In fact, Walgreens is one of them. Their shares fell 9.3% on Tuesday this week. That makes them the biggest loser in the S&P 500 for the week. Losing 9% in a week is pretty serious. But it gets worse because over the past year, Walgreens stock is actually down by 30%, which is even more significant. But yet somehow the S&P 500 is up 15%, guys. So makes no sense, right? Because you have only a few companies pulling the load of the entire S&P 500 right now. Most people who are really smart about the economy know that that is not going to last. There's no way that you can have just a few companies pulling the weight on the entire S&P 500 right now and everything's just going to move on, business as usual, it's all going to be beautiful. No. And actually Walgreens profits were up 8.6% in this past quarter, and they say that's mainly due to higher prices for prescription drugs and an increase in the number of prescriptions being filled. So basically, Walgreens seems like they make the lion's share of their money from writing prescriptions, or filling prescriptions, I guess you could say. But many other major retailers are losing money right now as well. In fact, retail sales across the entire country are down by 0.2%, which is not a lot, but it's not trending in the right direction if you're trying to run a business. Here we have a house for rent that's listed for 16 grand a month, but previously they were asking 20 grand a month, and it's been listed for rent basically since the middle of last year, because they were actually asking more than that, $25,000 last June, and this house has basically been empty for over a year, which is insane when you look at the fact that they're paying $21,500 per year in property taxes. Walgreens is also reporting that there's lower discretionary spending at the stores, as well as people who have food stamps and tax refund money are not spending as much either because of inflation, and they're pretty much picking and choosing how much they're spending and where they're spending it at right now, because everyone's trying to make a dollar go further, which makes sense because that's pretty much the situation everyone's in right now unless you're wealthy. But you know, you can also see just how much money these businesses like Walgreens were making off of this pandemic, guys. Like in this last quarter, they gave out 800,000 vaccine shots, okay? But in the same quarter a year ago, it was 4.7 million, guys. That's insane. And it's just crazy when big business is involved in what's supposed to be a public health emergency, right? But yet there's billions of dollars to be made. So nothing fishy going on there. And that's really all I'm going to say about that. But the other thing is they're actively pushing to increase the amount of vaccinations that they give at Walgreens because this is such a huge source of revenue for them, guys. So now they're trying to expand into things like urgent care and things like that. But another part of the problem of why Walgreens has been losing money is because of reduced operating hours that started during the pandemic as well. And they're saying that many of their pharmacies are still understaffed and are basically operating on reduced schedules right now because they just can't get people to work, guys. It's not like Walgreens has ever been known for its customer service, but the last time I was in the Walgreens in my neighborhood, things have definitely gone downhill in terms of customer service, how many people they have there to check people out, and just get the basics done. Even at the pharmacy, you could be standing there waiting for 15 minutes just to get the prescription that's already filled. It's sitting right there at the counter, but you know, only one person's allowed to do that, and everybody else has to be on the phone or counting pills or whatever it is they do. So it's hard to keep a business profitable when the customer service starts going in the toilet as well. Now, speaking of jobs and the economy and everything along with that, Moodys Analytics, they just did a new report as of June of 2023, and they're looking at things like the cooling job growth, the eroding excess savings that people had left over from the pandemic, from all the stimulus, and the effect that elevated interest rates are having, as well as tighter bank lending. And they're saying despite all of this, people are still spending money. Well, yeah, no kidding, guys, because people need things to live. Also, it seems like people have access to an endless amount of credit cards here and are not afraid to use them. Combine that with inflation, and people are forced to spend more on everything right now, whether they want to or not. Of course, spending is up. And Moody's is basically saying in this report that pretty much the only thing that's keeping this economy going right now is the low unemployment rate. Just like I keep telling you that the only thing that's keeping the housing market going is low inventory, it's the same thing with the economy, guys. Low unemployment is what's keeping everything afloat right now. And if you don't believe me, just wait until the unemployment rate doubles and see where we're at when that happens. And the Fed is actively trying to make that happen right now. Now, this house here is one of the most botched attempts at a flip I have ever seen. They bought this house last year in 2022 for $2,250,000 in February. Then they turned around, listed it for sale for almost $2.5 million, and price reduction after price reduction, could not sell it. Look at that, just sold a couple weeks ago. Holy moly, for $1.85 million, about $400,000 less than this person paid for this house last year, guys. That is insane. And on top of that, property tax bill here is 20 grand a year. So what Moody's is saying here in their report, things are not going to look nearly as good as they look right now when the unemployment rate starts to tick up, guys. And here's the thing, because unemployment is pretty much at 60-year lows right now, there's pretty much only one place for that to go, and that is up, okay? The idea that unemployment is going to remain low in a high interest rate environment indefinitely is pretty much a pipe dream. That's something that we've never really seen happen before, but yet again, we've seen so many things happening lately that we've never seen happen before. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I feel like at the moment, nothing is impossible. And they also included in this report that household debt is on the rise, which is something we've talked about before, but just in the first quarter of 2023, guys, the amount of household debt went up by $148 billion and is now sitting at $17 trillion nationwide. That is astounding. And get this, it's not me just saying this either. Moody's is saying that one of the things they think is going to have a big impact on the economy later this year is going to be the resumption of student loan payments, guys. I think most people don't realize how big of a deal this is, because it affects so many people. When 40 million Americans have student loan debt that needs to be repaid and will be resuming soon, that's going to have a big impact on things, especially when the average payment's $400 a month. So that's just the average. And all these businesses suffering is also having an impact on the way businesses hire employees, or don't hire them in this case, because when you combine the rise of remote work with the fact that a lot of these businesses are not doing good right now, more and more businesses are opting to just hire people on as subcontractors, or basically gig workers, meaning that you don't have full-time employment at the company, or maybe not even part-time employment, you're just a subcontractor, which is pretty much how I've always worked when I was working in real estate. When you work for a real estate company, you're not a salaried employee, you're not actually an employee at all. You're just considered a subcontractor or independent contractor. And more businesses are looking at like, hey, people don't want to come back into the office, so why not grant their wish and they don't have to come back into the office? We can now get away with not hiring so many people anymore, not having so many full-time employees. This cuts back on our overhead, and we can look for cheaper places to fill the remote work positions, not necessarily here in the US. And on top of that, they can get rid of their office space, and they don't have to pay benefits that they would normally have to pay for full-time employees. So this is a huge win for businesses that are struggling right now, that are trying to save money. Oh, we don't have to hire people anymore. We just pay them for a one-time job and that's it. We don't have to contribute to their 401k. We don't have to pay their health insurance. We don't have to pay for anything. So what they're calling this is, it's basically Uberization of the workforce, where everything is single serving right now. Everything can be done for a one-time fee, and there's pretty much subcontractors for everything in this day and age. For some people that might be great, because if you're a hustler, then you can pretty much take on as much work as you want and cut back when you don't want as much work, because you want to take a vacation or whatever. And the benefit of that is you don't have to ask anyone's permission. You just go for it, right? But obviously the downside is for people that are used to the regular 9-to-5 grind and getting their salary and a guaranteed paycheck and guaranteed benefits, well, that's largely disappearing right now due to this change in the economy. And companies have never really liked hiring full-time employees, but they had no choice, because when people used to go to the office and everybody had to show up to work, then they had to provide something in return for these people and invest in them and try to create some source of camaraderie and commitment to the company in order to keep people around for any substantial amount of time. But now that more people are not wanting to come into the office, companies are not compelled to do this anymore, and it's saving them a ton of money. And since the remote work trend took off during the pandemic, a lot of these companies are now realizing, like, hey, wait a minute, we can get people to do this from anywhere depending on what the job is, and we don't have to pay them as much. Just like we talked about the other day, a lot of people would be willing to take that 20% pay cut if they didn't have to come into the office anymore, guys. I'm telling you, this is going to be one of those situations where be careful what you wish for, because it could end up being more than a 20% pay cut. It might end up being, oh, well, we found somebody in Sri Lanka to do it for pennies on the dollar compared to what you'll do it for, so we don't need you anymore. I'm not saying that's going to happen to everyone. I'm sure there are certain jobs that require a high skill set that can't be replaced in a third world country right now, but that's not the case for everybody. Now here we have a brand new listing, literally just listed it yesterday for $2.1 million, and I guess they didn't look at the comps very well, because the house we just saw sold for $1.85 million, which is considerably less than this one, and it's just one block away from here. But whatever, I'm not the listing agent. They also listed the house for rent for $9,950 a month. I'm not sure if that's a fair price for this house or not. I haven't been in it, but this one's too soon to tell what's going to happen with it. But I do know that the property tax bill here is substantial at almost $25,000 per year. And this is such a huge shift in the way things are done and the way business is done that it's estimated that freelance work, or independent contractors, however you want to call it, or gig work, basically a one-time job for somebody, those type of jobs now make up 36% of the entire workforce, guys. You're talking 1/3 of all the available job opportunities out there right now are some sort of remote work, get paid once or get paid for a day type of jobs, and that's it. Is this a good thing according to you? Is this something that you're happy about? Do you like being a regular employee, or do you like being able to take on 10 independent contractor jobs at once? I'm sure everybody's take on this is going to be a little bit different. Personally, I always enjoyed the freedom of being able to have days in real estate where, man, if I just don't want to work today, as long as I don't have any customers I have to see, I could take the day off and didn't have to ask anybody before it. Same thing with, taking vacations and stuff like that. But it does require a level of discipline that some people don't have. And to show how much this type of work is growing right now, back in 2016, gig workers only made up about 27% of the workforce, and now it's up to 36%, guys. So now the average company has one contract worker for every 5 regular employees, which is up 63% since 2019. So this is clearly the direction that companies are moving in right now. And like I said, be careful what you wish for. A lot of people don't want to come back to the office. Well, that's fine, but there might not be an office to come back to, and that could be a problem for some people. But one big question is, are people wanting this, or is this something that people are being forced into? A lot of people say they enjoy this type of work and they're happy with the scenario. However, in 2016, they did a survey of how many people are taking these remote work jobs, are taking these gig jobs or contractor jobs out of necessity or because they want it. And back then it was 14% of people said that they're taking these type of jobs because they have to, right? They need to do this to make ends meet. But now in 2022, when they did this same survey, the number jumped up to 26%. So it seems like also the reason people are taking on these gig jobs is because it's a way to make extra money, guys. Everybody has a side hustle now. And they're saying that one of the problems with this type of work is that it offers no real future for advancement. It's not like climbing the corporate ladder or working at the same factory or grocery store for 30 years and moving up the chain to become the manager or the store leader or whatever, right? When you do this type of work, you get paid today and maybe we don't need you tomorrow. But I do think that people should take advantage of this, because even though you're not seeing the benefits, you know, like you would get from a regular employer, you can hustle. Like I said, guys, you can set your own hours and work smarter and more efficiently than before, and possibly find a way to even make more money than you did when you were working a regular job if you can land a couple different contractor jobs like this. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you're happy with the direction things are going, with everything becoming a gig, a contract job, and possibly making full-time jobs extinct in the next couple of decades. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video, and if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.